So I'd like to now recognize my colleague from California, Mr. Takano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Leighton, you state in your testimony that transparency is the minimum protection that families need before committing to one of the most expensive decisions of a lifetime. And I couldn't agree more with that assertion. Ms. Leighton, you also describe how the current gainful employment and the financial value transparency rules, well, can you describe how the current gainful employment and financial value transparency rules protect students?
Absolutely, thanks for the question. And just to underscore, transparency is not a substitute for protection. And I will say both of these rules, the gainful employment rule and the financial value transparency rule, go as far as the Department of Education can go without congressional action. And I really applaud the department for going as far as it has gone. And H.R. 1 did do an accountability measure, but it really lacked some holes that the gainful employment rule keeps in place. So one of them is what I mentioned earlier, which are these really risky certificates that where we see a lot of concentrated, terrible outcomes for students. And then we see a lot of programs where you have students are drowning in debt that they can't pay back. H.R. 1 took a good step, and it has a mandatory earnings provision, but it doesn't include that debt piece, and it has this whole entire loophole for these certificates. But gainful employment is the backstop to that because it will protect students against those programs. But the problem is, it's a rule, and we all know regulations come and regulations go. And I think it would be better if this were codified in law, but until and unless it is, it needs to stay, and I think that Congress needs to use its congressional oversight authority to make sure that the rule is enforced, that the rule is being implemented, and that the data that are coming out of the rule are shared with the public. And the same thing is happening with the financial value transparency rule, which is, we're talking about transparency of price. We need transparency of price for particular programs. We need transparency of outcomes, and this is called FVT, financial value transparency. It is I think it's the most impressive step the Department of Education, the federal government, has taken so far in terms of transparency. And I would also encourage I would encourage Congress to encourage the department to both implement the financial value transparency rule and make sure that those data come out. Because right now, sorry to get a little bit wonky, the department has just finished 2 rounds of collecting the data. So we could publish those now and have information that students could use today or as soon as they publish it to make these decisions. And I will say that the gainful employment rule is on the docket right now. The Department of Education is reconsidering it during an upcoming negotiated rulemaking session, and colleges are already lining up and writing in their comments saying, ooh, let's weaken that rule, let's get rid of that rule. And what that's gonna mean is it's not just gonna hurt the students who are in those programs today, the certificate programs or the unmanageable debt, the certificate programs that I talked about. It means there's gonna be an incentive for colleges to create more and more and more of those programs because they are not subject to that accountability, and that's really dangerous for students.
To summarize, transparency is important. It's a minimum basis, and I think we as Republicans and Democrats can agree on that point. But I think we don't necessarily see eye to eye on the equal, or if not more importance, placed on gainful employment and the financial value transparency rules. So I think I would hope that the 2 sides can come together and see how all these can work together to protect both the taxpayer and the student. Now, I agree with my colleagues that transparency in college pricing is a serious issue, but there are a number of factors that make the cost of college rise. The Republican reconciliation package massively cut foundational federal health care and nutrition programs and have strapped states for resources as they scramble to cover those costs. They've pushed these costs onto the states. How will the reduction in Medicaid and SNAP impact the cost of public education and the funding for state financial aid?
It's going to be huge. I mean, the first thing that states do when they're facing budget cuts is they cut higher education. And they cut higher education because they can raise money for it. But the raising money for it is raising tuition, which means the budgets are being balanced on the backs of students, often in the forms of debt. These are going to be massive holes in state budgets with the cuts to Medicaid and SNAP, and it's going to have a really big impact on student affordability.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Are you back?
Thank you.